Radio Rahim here with Abel Sánchez in hallowed ground. If you've been a boxing fan for any amount of time now, I don't have to introduce the backdrop. This is the summit. This is where a lot of fighters have climbed through those ropes, and Abel Sánchez has worked mitts, has gotten fighters ready for championship moments. Some of the biggest names in boxing have been here in this very unique environment. And there's really just a few of them in boxing. Places like Gleason's Gym, Wildcard Boxing, and the Summit, I would say, are the gold standards in our sport. The reason I say that, not just because they're well known, but because in each environment they have a unique feel and there's a name attached to them that people associate a certain kind of community with. So when I step in here, I feel you. I feel your energy. I've been here many times, and today it's a little bit special because it makes me reflect on all the times I've been here, and it reminds me that people don't really know who builds these houses. You know, people think Pacquiao built Wildcard. Wildcard was there before Pacquiao. The Summit was here before Triple G. You know, so I want to just start by talking about how this house got built initially. Like, what made this plot of land the Summit, which it is now?
Fortunately for me, I had this burning desire inside me to train fighters and make champions. In the late 70s, I started in El Monte at Ben Lera's gym, and I always had the dream of building my own gym and having my own gym, my own private gym. When I went down to San Diego, I was able to associate with a group of managers that had a gym in Campo, California, where I was able to develop 3 champions out of there, with Terry Norris and Orlin Norris being the leaders. But as I got older and we got away from Campo, and I was going to gyms to train fighters in other public gyms, I wasn't getting the response from the fighters that I wanted. So in about 2001, I decided to retire. But along the way in '96, when I trained Miguel Gonzalez here in Big Bear at another gym, I bought a bunch of property here in Big Bear with the intention that eventually one day I would build a gym for myself. 2001, I finished this gym. 2008, late 2008, Oscar De La Hoya was the first one to use this gym. When he fought Manny Pacquiao, right? And once that got out that he was here and it was a gym in Big Bear, a private gym, then I started getting phone calls. 2010 is when I got the phone call for Gennady. But it's been a slowly build, but I think the fact that it has been a private facility just for those kind of fighters, it has become, at least here in Southern California anyway, kind of a mecca, kind of a place where if you've been to the Summit, you've trained with the best. You've trained at a good gym. So I'm happy with the history. It's that it has evolved from it, but now we continue hopefully to make more champions.
When you say the building of this place, a lot of people don't know that we also mean literally. You're in construction. Like, you don't just build careers, yeah. You build buildings.
No, I built this, yeah.
Yeah, you've built this structure, and it makes me wonder when it comes to trainers and their theories and the way that they impart wisdom and create an atmosphere and build a strategy with a fighter, what their technique is. How much of that comes from building, like brick and mortar building? How is constructing a structure relative to constructing a fighter?
I've always believed that if you were put on this earth to do something, and if you're blessed enough to discover that something that you were put on this earth to do, I think I was put on this earth to be a teacher, to be an instructor of some sort, to parlay what I know and what I've learned. I was a building contractor when I was 18 years old. I built a lot of buildings. I probably have 20 or 25 young men that I developed into carpenters and into contractors along the route. If you know the movie E.T., I built all those houses. I did the concrete and the framing for all that housing development. There was 2 of them, a 21 and a 20 house tract. So I've had a blessed life. I've been able to do a lot of things that I've always wanted to do. But that correlates with the training also. When I first started training, the construction part of being able to deal with personalities and characters and how people think and behave became very handy when you start dealing with fighters, because fighters all have different personalities and different characters. So I think that was a continuation of it. And when I moved here to Big Bear, when I came here with Miguel and I bought a bunch of property, I probably have built 40 houses here in Big Bear. But when I moved here permanently in 96, middle 96, to train Miguel for Oscar De La Hoya fight, I saw the possibility as a contractor to build homes and to develop homes and to have a gym. So when I bought these two particular lots, I had the idea of building a private gym. And actually it was for Emmanuel Steward at the beginning, because he was up here with Lennox and with Oscar. And once I started the construction and Emmanuel really couldn't stay up here because of his schedule, I decided to open it for myself. And when I opened it for myself, and by the time Oscar trained here in 2008, when he fought Manny, people started to find out about it. And when they found out about it, they started calling, and before I know it, I'm back in. I had retired from boxing, but I'm back into boxing. And the system that was developed in this gym, for this gym, is a continuation of all the other fighters that I've had in the past. Terry Norris, the Paul Vades, the Miguel Gonzalez, the Botas, the Peters, all those guys taught me something on what I wanted to do and what I wanted to have in the gym. All the travels all over the world taught me what I wanted to have in my gym and how I wanted my gym to be. And as it started and we've had so much success, the system that we have here, the things that we do here have been very instrumental in a lot of careers. And the concept has been, I don't like decisions, I like knockouts, and we've had a lot of success with that. Obviously not everybody's gonna get knocked out, but we leave it in the hand of the judges if we have a decision. So the concept was to do things here for that reason.
How much influence did Emmanuel Steward have on you?
Tremendous amount. In fact, if you look at my shirt here, when the day after he died, I put this on my logo because he was more like a mentor. He was a guy that would sit down with you and talk to you about situations that he'd been in, situations that he had come across, things that would happen to you and things that you need to do. And just to listen to him about boxing and about his knowledge was instrumental in a lot of the things that I do. When I first saw him back in the, I would say mid or early 80s, I saw him on TV with a couple of his fighters, and I said to myself, I said, that's the kind of coach I want to be. That's the kind of coach I want to be in a corner. That's the kind of coach I want to be. That's the simple things that he used to do, to me, were very important.
He had Crunk Gym. Those guys, they wear that like a banner of pride. It's like a family crest. I hear you talk about this is a family here. All your fighters eat together. They train together. They watch TV together. You have a living facility upstairs. So I can see the relation there. What was it about him when you first saw him and was like, I want to be that kind of trainer? What was it that he was doing that you wanted to emulate?
He instilled a team environment. It's not it's a bunch of guys, even though one career doesn't depend on another career. Just the support and the being able to work together, I think, was important to Emmanuel. The fact that he had people around each other that wanted success for each other was important, and I think that's what I wanted. I wanted that to be a family unit that pulled for each other and supported each other and was willing to go to their fights and was willing to say nice things about each other because they work together, because they eat together, they run together in the morning. And I think I've accomplished that. I think that unfortunately for Emmanuel, where he was at, he didn't have housing for the guys, but they all met at the gym, they all trained at the gym, they all worked together. So we have that here.
A lot of people don't recognize, like, okay, you talk about, let's say, I'm just pulling a number, say 5 guys. If you have 5 guys, you're training all 5, even if you have living facilities, you're able to keep everyone together. That's 5 guys having their own one workout, but you working out 5 different guys in one day. That's the trainer having to deal, as you said, with 5 different personalities, 5 different people that are at different levels of financially, with their family, with their development. That is 5 times the emotional investment, 5 times literally the amount of time, and then being able to create an environment where they can all be comfortable and grow is singularly your job. It's difficult, I think, for people to appreciate what the sacrifices are for a trainer in that way. Because you see a guy in a corner in a single fight, you just think, okay, he's just doing this one job. Can you kind of expound on what a day in the life is like? What it really requires to not just be a trainer, but be a trainer of a facility, of a stable, and of champions.
I've been doing this about over 40 years. I've never had an assistant in my gym. I do everything in my gym. I do all the strength and conditioning. I do all the training. I do all the counseling. I clean my own gym. I do my own towels. I get here at 6 o'clock in the morning. We go out to run. I usually don't go home from here to have breakfast until about 8:30. I come back at 11 o'clock in the morning. I do some cleanup. I do certain things that need to be done in the gym. I generally don't get out of here until about 7:30, 8 o'clock. So it's a full day, and it's not just 5. It'll be 11 o'clock maybe one time, 1 o'clock another training time, 3 o'clock another training time, 5 o'clock another training time. So it could be up to 10 guys that we're working with. So it's quite a load. But if you truly enjoy what you do, it's not really a load.
What we love about this sport is on any given Saturday, a career could change. A guy can fall. No matter how big a favorite he is, one punch can change a fight, all of those things. But that makes it a really big gamble, especially for a trainer who's investing in a guy who we don't know he's going to pay off. You see potential. You see maybe a future. Most guys that build a fighter, they're not coming to you as a star with a belt around their waist already and a big bag of money to hand you. So when you decide, hey, I'm going to invest my time, I'm going to invest my money, I'm going to allow this man to live in my facility, what is the indication for you that this guy's worth the investment? What are you looking for in a fighter?
Well, if you really truly love to teach, the investment really you don't look at when you're doing it. You look at it maybe when you're doing without your family and doing without the things that other people have. But what I like to do is I like to take on a guy. Say you had a fighter and you were offering him to me. I'd say to send him up here for 3 to 4 weeks, pay for him to stay either at a hotel or stay here, and let him work with me for 3 or 4 weeks and see if we get along. Nobody needs to know. The public doesn't need to know. There's no cameras up here, and that way there's no commitment from you or no commitment from me, no commitment from the fighter. We come up for 3 or 4 weeks, and if we get along, then fine. But I don't want to be married to you for 10 years or 5 years if we're not going to get along. It's no fun that way. So if we get along, then we discuss it further after that. But I think that once in 3 to 4 weeks, they get to see how I work, and I get to see their commitment and what their aspirations are and where they want to be. And if all that is there, then we make a deal. Then we start working.
You know, I talk to trainers all the time, but the big ones, it's funny because a lot of them have some anecdotes that kind of keep them going through the tough spots. Freddie Roach is a famous guy for one-liners. You know, Virgil Hunter will soothsay you for hours on end if you just let them talk. But they all have something that carries them through a mantra, a way of just dealing with adversity. What's yours?
Mine, honestly, has always been, if you look at any of my fights and any of my fighters in the ring, you won't see me behind them. You'll see me over to the side. Generally, I let all my people just be behind the fighter when they're on camera. Yeah. I'll be over by the commission or by somebody else. And because it's not my moment, it's the fighter's moment. It's the people that have worked hard with me in the corner that are going to work hard with me in the corner. It's their moment. And my most exciting part of all this is seeing my fighters smile after they've been successful, jumping up and down and seeing that all that hard work has paid off. Like I said, I've had a blessed life. I've done a lot of things that I've wanted to do. I've enjoyed my life thoroughly. So I'm not looking for camera time. I'm looking for success in my kids, in my sons that are in this gym.
The kind of taxing physical demands it takes to be a trainer. It's incredible to see Freddie Roach fight through his illness, to be able to do what he does, you know, not just run his environment, but on the mitts and physically. We saw Emmanuel Steward maybe should have tapered off a little bit with the kind of activity, the demand that was on him. You had a heart attack.
Yes, I had a heart attack in 2001.
Right, even before all this, after the Terry Norris, all of that kind of stress and the physical nature of a trainer, it's a perfect example of a reason you could just say, hey, let's take my foot off the gas, maybe get somebody else in here, work the mitts, or even stop doing this altogether. What is it that got you through that adversity, rebuilt you back to where you're strong and confident? And then What brought you back to boxing after that?
I'm 64 years old. I'll be 64 years old this November. I love to work. I love to be busy. I love to teach. Again, I love the smile on my guys' face when they've accomplished something. But before this latest run on boxing, construction, you go to a job and you see a piece of land, a stack of lumber, and a bunch of nails and a set of plans, and 6 weeks later you have a house standing there that you built. So it's the accomplishment, I think, that's so important for me. I've always been a driven guy. I've always had 3 or 4 things going at the same time. I've always been driven to succeed and driven to be the best that I could be. You know about my pictures, my photography. I love to take pictures. I want to be the best that I can be at that. I will never be because I don't put enough time in it, but I'm going to try to be the best I can be. I play golf, and I'm insatiably stuck on trying to be the better than I am right now. But all those things I think have to be important. I think the successful people, as you mentioned, Freddie and Robert and Virgil, all these people have this drive inside of them that nobody sees, but they know that drive. When they look in the mirror in the morning, they know that drive is there, and they're so forward looking looking forward to going to work and accomplishing something that day.
You know, generationally, a lot of times people don't look back and really understand the history or where a guy comes from. Like you say, you're 64. So it's probably unlikely that Triple G was the first time that you had a champion, or the first time you had to deal with the rigors of negotiation and financial issues in boxing. So I'm going to take you back to Terry Norris, who some of these kids just barely don't even know his story, much less yours. And what was that experience like? Are there things that happened then that still inform you today of like how to deal with champions, how to deal with these situations?
Actually, my first 3 fighters out of the gate by myself were world champions. Lupe Aquino was the first champion, Terry Norris was the second, Orlin Norris was the third, and there were many after. But unfortunately, I had a young man named Paul Vaden back when he was younger. He also became IBF champion of the world. And when he had about 12 fights, we had just got finished with Terry Norris knocking out Meldrick Taylor in 4 rounds. We have a next fight scheduled in September in Vegas for Simon Brown, where the fight gets called off right before we go on HBO. A couple months later, I was called into the manager's office and presented a piece of paper with 2 lines on it. And the reason I'm saying this story is because it's kind of apropos to what's happening to me today. I get a piece of paper with Terry's signature and the manager's signature on it, saying if I wanted to continue being Terry Norris's trainer, mind you, this is after 8 or 9 defenses of his middleweight title. He's in the Hall of Fame today. And the letter said, if I want to continue to be Terry Norris's trainer, I had to be exclusive. I couldn't train nobody else, and I would have to take a 50% cut in pay. At the time, I had Orlin Norris, who I was managing and training. I had Miguel Gonzalez, Paul Vaden, Yuri Boy Campas, Jesus Salud. I let them talk, or let him talk, and I said that I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that for different reasons, not only the monetary reason, but I had a moral commitment to my other guys to make sure that I was there for them. I walked out of the office, walked outside, and as I'm walking outside, Orlin Norris drives up in his car, and he says, and I know about it, Coach. He says, don't worry, my brother's loss is my gain. 3 fights later, Orlin Norris became cruiserweight champion of the world. So all these things happen for a reason. Unfortunately, they happen in this game. But yeah, I've been around since the early '80s, late '70s, doing my thing and trying to perfect my craft in helping these kids with what I love to do and what they love to do also.
Boxing, the insiders, us who work in the sport, it's really a small community. It's a global sport, but those of us who are in this day to day, when we hear news like Triple G and Abel Sanchez have split, like I honestly tell you, it felt like one of my friends called me and said like they were getting a divorce. Like one of my buddies have gotten a divorce from a woman like that. I've known them both for a decade. And that's how it rippled through the community. Like everybody's calling everybody, like, well, and then of course we as journalists want to find out what other people think and how other people react to it. And one of the first people I talked to actually was Freddie Roach. He said something interesting because I do get attached to boxing and relationships, and you especially because I'm in California. I've been here many times. I feel like the Triple G Abel Sanchez journey has been one I've been on almost from the very beginning. So I was, it felt a little personal. And Freddie was like, hey, if you're going to be a trainer in boxing, get used to getting fired.
It's so true. It's so true. The unfortunate thing about that is that in the whole in the athlete's life, there's 5 or 6 people that are involved. The manager is involved. The manager is protected by a contract. The promoter is involved. The promoter is protected by a contract that guarantees them certain things. The fighter is protected by a contract. The only one in this whole equation, which is really the one that has most to do with success and failure, is the coach. Historically, he's never been protected by a contract, and at any time, he can be let go. And he can be let go with any future compensation. If you're a CEO with a company, you go with an umbrella. You go away with compensation after. And I speak only because I have a platform right now because I'm one of the elder coaches, let's just say. But there's a lot of young coaches that this is happening to also, that don't have the means to recuperate what they have or get back some of those the monies they may lose. The one thing we cannot get back is that time. The time that we spent with these young men, we can't get that back. We can't go back to our kids and say, we're going to go back 10 years and we're going to spend some time with you because that time is gone. So unfortunately, this is happening much, much too often. You only read about mine because I'm on a higher level, but there's a lot of them happening down below.
I'm going to go a little further down the road with this marriage analogy because it's a frame that makes sense to me. It's like the relationship between fighter and trainer has to be so personal and so much trust there. It's kind of like asking for a prenup at the beginning. Because I wonder why that's the case. Why isn't there a contract? Why isn't that kind of thing built into the relationship? Is it because it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, or because of the trust you expect certain things that may even be spoken but unwritten?
For all those reasons, but I think at the beginning when there's no guarantee of success. There's no guarantee of anything when you're fighting for $1,000 a round or $500 a round, whatever it is that you're fighting for, whatever show you're fighting on. It's difficult to tell, or it's difficult to bring up the subject. First of all, not only to the fighter but to the manager, because the manager feels threatened. The manager should be the one that protects the coach. The manager should be the one that protects the coach because the success of the manager really depends a lot on a good coach. But that is never the case. Now, once you get to a certain point where you're making a lot of money, then it's difficult to bring that up because it'd be the same thing as in a marriage. Right. All of a sudden you're going into marriage, and let's just say you're newly married and you ask for a prenup, and the husband has $10 million in the bank, and the wife thinks all she's thinking as she's getting married, or when she gets married, I'm going to be part of that. And you ask for a prenup, the relationship will not be the same after that, unfortunately. It should be looked at, in my opinion, it should be looked at as we're trying to, we love each other right now, or we want to be with each other right now as fighter and trainer, then let's be together for the rest of the time. Now, if something does dramatically happen where there is a reason for a breakup, whether it be a marriage or a coach, then all that needs to be looked at. But it needs to be looked at in a context of, okay, how many years were put in? Is there alimony? Is there child support? Is there anything after that? And I think, unfortunately, that it's not. And everybody, because of this era of the internet, everybody has an opinion of what it should be and it shouldn't be.
Everybody's got an opinion. Even I have an opinion. But most of us don't know or can't agree on what's the industry standard. I've asked other trainers. I've read comments from fans. Who knows whether or not they're really aware. I've talked to fighters. I'm not getting a consistent answer. What is expected? What's the industry standard? I know 10%, what trainers tend to get, like that's an industry standard, but even that hasn't been at least relayed to me as something that's down the line for your entire career. Circumstances change, and then that becomes something that's negotiable. What do you consider the industry standard? Like, what is it that is expected in a situation like yours?
Okay, well, first of all, as far as the internet is concerned and people talking, read that sign behind me. You gonna read that?
People have a lot to say about lives they've never lived. Well,
Okay.
right.
The standard should be and is, if you look at a jockey that runs at Santa Anita in a small claiming, he gets the same amount that he does if he wins the Kentucky Derby. Okay? Coach Phil Jackson, when he started training the Lakers, and he won after his fifth one, they didn't demote him because he was making too much money. So a coach that starts out making sometimes $300 or $400 a fight and spends 3 or 4 months is hoping that his work, his effort, and the fighter's effort will eventually get him to the point where he's making $1,000 a fight or maybe $10,000 a fight. And as this is happening, all this time, the coach and his family are planning for the future, are planning for those days when we're going to be able to buy a house, or we're going to be able to send our kids to college or our grandkids to college. Unfortunately, I'm in a different position because I had something before this that I was fortunate to do very well with, which was construction. But there's a lot of coaches out there that are not in my position, that are living week to week, day to day, month to month. So it's really a sacrifice for them to do what we do. But for instance, let's just say that I don't know how many followers you have on YouTube, but let's just say you get X amount of dollars in your how you live, how you travel, how you vacation, how your kids go to school, how your mom is taken care of, how all those things are being done the way that you want them. And tomorrow they came to you and said, we're going to pay you, we're going to cap you at X amount of dollars. All those plans that you made, all those dreams that you had, all those plans that you made about buying your son a car or buying your son a house, are out the window. Why? I would like an intelligent reason for somebody to give me an intelligent reason why that's fair.
I'll tell you, you can decide whether or not it's intelligent. But the reason for people, if we're going to talk more specifically about Triple G and yourself now, that people who come down on his side of this, I don't know if it's an argument or debate, they say, well, he's gotten this bag. It's his last big check. It's the end of his career. He should take care of his family. Abel should take, he's going to make a lot of money anyway. Why should he get a huge percentage now that the money's so big? What is really owed him other than a renegotiation?
Okay, let me ask you this. How many coaches, you've been around in this game long enough to know a lot of coaches. I'll give you one, for instance. Let's just say Virgil from up there in Northern California. You had Andre Ward. How many times are we going to get Andre Wards? How many times is any coach going to get another Gennady Golovkin? How many times? Where am I going to make the money? Where is Virgil going to make the money again? Where is Freddie going to make the Pacquiao money again? Where? How many coaches do you know that have more than once?
Yeah, that's true.
So that argument of I'm going to make more money, give me an intelligent reason when? When?
Okay, so in principle, if it's 10% early, 10% of very little is even less.
Absolutely.
So I think people can appreciate, hey, we're in this together. We're trying to get to that big moment where you get the big payday. You got to keep winning. I'm a big part of that. But when it comes, is he really paying you for the monies and the times that you felt you weren't properly compensated for because the money wasn't there, and that's why you deserve what sounds like a lot of money at the end? Because $100 million is a lot of money for a fighter. If 10%, we're talking about $10 million is a lot of money for a trainer. Is that fair? Does he owe you something on checks that you've already cashed, is what I'm saying?
If I invested in the stock market tomorrow, and in 10 years it went up dramatically up, and do I deserve that? I didn't do nothing. But I invested the money, the hard-earned money today, to be able to capitalize on it later. Why isn't that not fair? Should I be capped on how much money I'm making on that investment? This is an investment. This is an investment of time all coaches make. This time we can't get back, man. We can't. Robert, I remember Robert Garcia 2 fights ago. His daughter was having a quinceañera. You remember that?
Yeah.
And he couldn't go to it. She only has one quinceañera. Only one. Kids only have one birthday. Kids only have one baseball game. Kids only, an all-star game, whatever. So all those things we can't get back. So why isn't it not just like the investment I just said? If I invest in the stock market, is it fair that I reap all that? Yeah, because if you didn't invest in it like I did, if you didn't invest in it like I did, and you don't make any money, is it fair that do I have to give some money back to you because you weren't smart enough to invest at the time? How many coaches are in this gym or in a gym investing the time that should be compensated from the coach that does make money if they're not putting in the time that I am?
Yeah, I think that's a valid case to make, and I would imagine if it was Triple G sitting here instead of me, you guys from that point would have something to discuss. I know when it comes down to actual negotiations, paperwork being faxed or emailed, and sometimes the actual principles are removed from the process, which can make it a lot. Yeah, it can make it a lot less personal.
Yeah, what happens is a business decision is made over a family situation.
Right. So did you guys actually talk to each other during this process, or was it?
I really would rather not get into that, but yes, we did talk to each other several times, and something was proposed that I didn't like, and I turned it down, and we go from there.
When the news came out, and I'm not even trying to press you to give me like what was said, because what was said publicly, I think spoke a lot. Triple G put out a pretty boilerplate standard statement. And then I expected kind of the same from you, and I'm like, well, how am I going to find out what really happened here? But yours was more emotional. Yours was quite biting, in fact. It felt like, you took this thing personally. So on the one hand, was that a reactionary kind of statement?
It was.
Like maybe.
It was. But how would you react?
I mean, I don't think I'm as cool as you. I would, this is why I can't manage other people. I got to read the star.
No, it's something that, and this is as my fighter Paul Vaden wrote to me the other day. He says, this is the second movie like this you've been in already. It happened to me with Terry Norris. It's happening to me again. And both of these kids in the top pound for pound list, Terry Norris was then 1 or 2, and G is now, and they're both in the Hall of Fame. I'm fortunate that I've gotten to this point. I'm fortunate that my skills have gotten to the point where I am in this situation. There's a lot of coaches that are unfortunately are not in this situation. It's a bad situation, but to be able to get there, to be able to say I was there, and these 2 kids that I train are in the Hall of Fame, and I have another one, Murat Garcia, who might end up in the Hall of Fame. So as a coach, I think that I've had a blessed career, that these things are happening to me. It's part of the business, and that remark or that tweet that I put out or statement that I put out, yeah, it was because it wasn't about it was about the people around me that have sacrificed for me to be here.
I think we all remember the last time this kind of thing happened in boxing was when we found out that Manny Pacquiao was going to take a fight without Freddie Roach in his corner. I don't want to get into like whether or not he was fired or what, but you don't train your coach and you put your coach in the corner on a fight, especially after years and years of doing exactly that. Somebody got fired or somebody quit. Right. So we assumed for a moment that maybe Pacquiao and Freddie Roach were done, but it was only one fight. And I do believe that when Manny Pacquiao made that move, he probably intended it for it to be permanent, and he came back. With that tweet being out there, with the language that you used, do you feel like it could be amended, this relationship? Could there be a day when Triple G says, you know what, maybe I made a mistake, can we talk about doing this again?
I don't think so. I don't think so because of this. And that's the thought was put into, even though it was a very emotional and very personal thing when I put that out, because he's got some self-serving advisors now that are not really doing what's best for Triple G, in my opinion. So because of that, I don't think that that is possible.
Not even between the two of you personally?
I don't think so. I would love to think that would be possible, but I don't hold grudges. I've never been one to hold grudges. I am, like I said, I'm hurt by what happened because of the people around me that have suffered without me. But if something came up in the future, I'm always willing to open and I'm always willing to talk. As long as it's a win-win for everybody, then I'm always willing to talk to anybody.
We talked about the community aspect of this gym. We've seen fighters even in here today that are very, intricate part of that community. And Triple G was the leader. I don't think that there's any argument there. He was, the guy at this gym. And I've seen guys sit with him and learn from him, and they talk about learning from him in the interviews, his work ethic, all these things. He's your prize pony, if you will. So when something like this happens, what's the ripple effect? How does it affect the other fighters?
Well, fortunately, it hasn't affected them in a way. If you see some of the posts that have been put by some of the fighters that are here, they're still friends with G. And I just said hello to Max the other day, his brother. I shook his hand and said hello. And I think in another interview that I did, they asked me if I lost a friend. I said I lost a friend and I lost a son. When your children do something wrong, you don't disown them. You're mad at them. You're mad at them for what has been done. You're disturbed and hurt by things they've said or things they've done, but you don't disown them. They're still your children. I don't wish them any ill will. I want them to be successful. I obviously, like as you were saying a little while ago about other people that do your work, you're better than anybody else.
Did I say that?
Yes. And I want to say that I feel like, but we have to feel that way. We have to feel that they can't do it without us. I know that that's a crazy thing to say, but they can. But sometimes a relationship, like you just said, a relationship in a situation for the fans and for the media that cover you every day, it's much more valuable. It's much more appealing and to cover when it's a happy situation.
Right.
When the people are fighting, it's not as comfortable to be around them. I hope that one day we can sit down and talk. If we do, we do.
Yeah, we talked a lot so far about the emotions and the relationships, but as you just brought up, what can be done without you? I consider myself the best that does this. We all have to feel that way. But now being separated from Triple G, I think another thing that people would say and have said, well, he can't learn anything more here. Abel's taught him everything that he can. Maybe the difference between him and Canelo is he needs another trainer that can take him to another level. In his statement, the one thing I think of somewhat interest he did say was like, I want to continue. I don't know if I'm quoting this correctly exactly, but the sentiment was, I want to continue getting better. I want to, find someone else to take me to another level, essentially. How much of that do you think played into his decision? And is there another level he can get to?
None of it played in his decision. The fact that bothered me about that statement was it was all I. It wasn't we. There was no promoter involved, I guess. There was no manager involved. There was no families involved. It was I that did this, and I got to this point, and I did this. And that's how children, when your children get older, that's how they're going to talk to you also. Unfortunately, sometimes when they're in their late teens and they become very self-sufficient, I guess. But you can always learn more. But along the trek of Gennady being who he has become, I would get emails and messages and letters from coaches and nutritionists and strength and conditioning coaches that would tell me that if I use them and if I bring them in, they promise me they can make Gennady 50% better than he is right now. Could you imagine that? We couldn't get fights before. If he was 50% better, we wouldn't be able to get any fights. He'd be destroying everybody. There would be nobody that he could fight. Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez and I think Danny Jacobs a little bit lower are at the top of the elite of the middleweights. They're the best middleweights in the world, if not the best fighters in the world, along with Terrence and Spence. For them, it'd be like saying Spence is going to go or Crawford's going to go somewhere else and learn something that it's going to make him 50% better than with Bomac. Sometimes you see it in football, you see it in baseball. And it's very possible. A player that's a second or third string on one team goes to another team and becomes a superstar. I think the difference in environment sometimes, the difference in how it's being spoken to or what is addressed to him makes a difference. But what if it don't? What if it don't? What if what you were doing in this gym is something that nobody else does? Will you have the push that was being pushed here? You've been here before. You've been in this gym. You see how these guys work. So we don't know until it develops itself. We don't know until after Steve. Maybe not Steve rolls, but maybe the next ones after that. We don't know how that's going to happen. When Kovalev left here, or when I asked him to leave, when he had 19, 20 fights, he went to train with John David. And all he could do was badmouth John David. John David was a 3-time world champion. I think he knew something about boxing. Okay, and slowly deteriorated to the point where he wasn't the crusher no more that he was when he won the title. So I don't know until it develops itself. I don't know how he's going to react to being in the corner without the voice that was there before, how he's going to react to training by himself, how he's going to react to being his own boss. What's that saying about brains? You're not going to be your own brain surgeon. You're not going to operate on yourself. You're not going to be your own lawyer. When you start training yourself, I think it's when things start to deteriorate. Things start to be left without doing. The ambition and the push is no longer there. I don't know how it's going to happen until it happens.
You mentioned that you've gone through this before. You talked about the Terry Norris situation. There have been others, even the Kovalev, where you asked him to leave very publicly. When a situation like this happens, I'd say this is more analogous to Norris than Kovalev. These guys were close. Is it like watching your ex-wife date? Like when he's out there looking for another coach and looking for someone else to be that voice in his ear, is that a difficult thing for you? Are you thinking about, well, if it's not going to be me, who would I like? Because I know you still love the guy, regardless of these these issues. What would you like for him if it can't be you? I don't know if that's a fair question. Is there another place that you feel he could?
It is a fair question. Whomever it is that he decides to go with, I wish or I would hope that he would give himself completely to that person. Give that person a chance. Kovalev didn't give John David a chance. He knew everything. So if and when he decides on somebody, I would hope that he gives that person a chance to impart. If he decides on somebody, it's going to be somebody that is very knowledgeable, obviously. He's not going to pick somebody.
We don't know. I mean,
what if, I would hope. Okay, I would hope.
What if it's his brother or someone like,
Oh, no, his brother's very knowledgeable too.
But not experienced.
Not experienced, but knowledgeable. But I hope that it's somebody that he can take some of that experience and wisdom from. That he doesn't just shut somebody out. And it's not like your ex-wife dating. If my ex-wife was dating, date whoever you want, man. That's up to you. It's out of my life,
Yeah.
But I would hope that he allows that person to guide him.
I know later in life with fighters that have had so much success, they feel like sometimes they're the ones who feel like there's nothing more I can learn. Hey, I can train myself. I just really need somebody to manage camp and this kind of thing. Is he at that level?
Nobody's at that level. Nobody's at that level. I'll tell you why. It's not a matter of I know what to do. It's a matter of all the little things leading up to the fight that can destroy the moment. Mike Tyson, Buster Douglas. Who knows what happened prior to the fight in Japan? Was it Buster Douglas that beat Mike Tyson? Maybe not. Maybe it was before they beat Mike Tyson. Andre Ward fighting Sergey Kovalev. Was it Andre Ward that was that good that beat Sergey Kovalev in the first fight or the second fight, whichever fight you want to talk about? Or is it Sergey Kovalev that beat himself prior to the fight? Nobody's at the level where they can just be themselves and think that just can step in a rope, because there's a guy on the other side that wants it bad. That wants it real bad. So if they're preparing themselves like they're the chasers and not the chasee, maybe they have a chance. And unfortunately in this game, that's what happens to some of the stars that forget about what got him there. Stop doing what got him there.
Yeah. When fighters, leave coaches, and when I get fired from a job, I want the place to burn down when I close the door. I want to be like, see, this place couldn't stand without me. But in this situation, obviously, like I said, there's a lot of love between the both of you when you talk about each other. But you guys are split, and there's a lot of this debate as to whether or not he needed you, whether or not there's going to be a good choice. Do you root for him? Do you still? I mean, even I think human nature would kind of be like, well, if he's not successful beyond me, kind of proves that he didn't need me. But your relationship with him may want him to succeed just because you're a good person and you love him.
I'd be a hypocrite to say that I don't, or at moments that I don't wish him bad. It'd be hypocritical for me to say that. But at the same time, I know the bittersweet moments that we went through, man. We went through hell together. We went through nothing together. And I wouldn't want him to suffer. We had some difficult times. We had some difficult times personally, family-wise. When he was here at the beginning, it was very, very, very hard for him with his family in Germany, just like a lot of these kids. So I know what he went through. I know the sacrifices that he made, the sacrifices that we all made. So no, it's kind of bittersweet. Like I said, no, I don't. Yes, I do. No, I don't.
Your other fighters, right? We just saw Joyce head over back home.
Well, let me tell you a story about Joyce. Joyce, I got a call from his manager about, this is before Gennady's situation, okay? I got a call from his manager about Joe wanting to concentrate in England, fight 4 or 5 times in England, wanted to make it more of a career in England, and wanted me to be involved in that. I can't. So Joe would like to stay here in England. I said, perfect. I said, and you can call Adam, his name is Adam, his manager, and ask him. I said, perfect, Adam, I think that's great. In fact, I was just talking to him about Guido, his other heavyweight. They have another heavyweight that I train here. I said, that's perfect. He can stay there. That's good. Fantastic. Look.
That would require you to leave some and all your other fighters.
Because I had G.
Which is yet another sacrifice.
Yes, I had G. Right. So.
Yeah. So I like that came up, and I brought him up not for that reason. I didn't know that story, but it's just another example of the sacrifice people don't know goes on behind the scenes. If G had been gone before then, maybe you make a different decision. Maybe you don't.
Absolutely.
But maybe you do.
It's the same decision that I made when I asked Kovalev to leave. I had G and Kovalev at the same time.
Right.
So I made a decision back then. I could have swallowed some of the situations that we were encountering with Kovalev, but I chose to make a decision, and it proved to be the right decision. Or maybe it could have been, maybe Kovalev's career would have gone in a different direction. And geez, you just don't know, man. That's what I'm saying about tomorrow's fight or his next fight with Steve. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to all roll out.
Yeah, in life you never know what's going to happen, but in your business, it's a roller coaster all the time. You went fight by fight. You talk about Oscar De La Hoya coming up here to train for Manny Pacquiao, and then all of a sudden the summit's a thing, and it explodes, and then people or the phone doesn't stop ringing. You get Triple G to a certain point, he's collecting middleweight titles, and now all of a sudden everybody wants to train with Abel.
Yeah, well, and this morning after the run, before you got here, I got my guys together, the 5 of them, and they were standing right there in the ropes, and I asked them to listen to me. I translated something in Russian for some of the guys that didn't speak that well English. And what I said to them was that, in fact, I'll show you what it says so that way you can, it was translated into Russian, but this is what I had them.
Because what you have right now is nothing compared to what you could have.
Okay. What I said to them is don't get complacent. Don't get lazy. Don't get to the point where you think you've accomplished, because I have one guy right here, Murat Asiev obviously is a big name, and Arsen Gulamirin is a WBA champion. Don't think that this is it. There's more to be had. There's more. The more you push, the more you strive for the next, and then it just so happens that after they're laying on the bench, and one of them says to the other, he says, "Gee, I've been here since I was 19 years old." Imagine what 19 years old and 24 years old, what the difference is from then, what you were thinking then, what you were doing then to 24 years old. So what I was asking them and imploring them is don't be lazy. Don't get complacent. Don't think that this is as good as it's going to get, because it's going to get better. You just got to allow it to get better. You got to work it to get better. So, so all those little talks that I have to have with them that are part of my job, that to keep them motivated, to keep them, because they're away from their families, to keep them motivated and keep them working hard. I want to make sure they understand that it's going to get better.
And that's something that's the fighter's perception, something you're imparting onto them. The roller coaster I'm talking about, although that build up, and then Joyce leaves. People don't know exactly why, but okay, he leaves.
Doesn't matter to me.
Like Triple G loses, Triple G leaves. It's like a leaky sieve, and it makes me wonder, now having been on more than one occasion on the upside and the downside of this roller coaster, knowing what you invest, and sometimes at the end it turns out this way. Does it give you pause when a guy comes in the door? Do you invest less? Do you start to feel like maybe this coach, fighter relationship, the way it's so heavy on the coach, and you're relying on this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, that you don't put in the same kind of effort and heart that you would otherwise, because it's not always paying off. When that big check comes, you don't get the share you feel due.
The only time it gives me pause is when I see my children, when I see my grandchildren, because I don't get to see them too much. That's the only time it gives. What the heck am I doing? I don't need to be doing this no more. I don't need to be doing it. I can retire tomorrow. What am I doing this for? That's the only time it gives me pause. But there's no pot at the end of the rainbow. When you start out with a guy, you start out investing time, and hopefully we're going to get there. Hopefully my skills and his skills put together are going to get us to that point. But again, I go back to what I said about how many coaches do you know that hit the lottery more than once? You don't, man. You don't, man. Freddie's only had Manny. Really, he's that kind of lottery, okay?
Right.
I've only had Gennady. I had Terry, made a lot of money too, but I've hit it twice. Robert hasn't hit it yet. Maidana made some money, but didn't really make that kind of money. His brother's making some money. Virgil had Andre. How many coaches do you have that get to hit the lottery twice? None of us. None of us. So when they come in the door and we start working with them, it's not because we think we're going to hit the lottery. It's because that chemistry is there, and they want to work hard and you want to work hard. But people only talk about me losing some of the names that you've said only because I'm at the top. There's a lot of other coaches that are losing the same way, but because they're not at the top, nobody talks about them. That's okay. I'll take that. I got big shoulders. I'll take that, and if I can be the spokesman, if I can be the loudmouth, if I can be for all us coaches that are getting mistreated, I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to do that. Why? Because I think that I have the platform to do it, and it's my responsibility to do it.
If you were talking to one of those up-and-coming coaches, those guys whose names we don't know or we may know 5 years from now, and they sat here with you and asked you, how should I navigate this world? If I do get a guy who I feel like he has promise, or if a guy comes to me with a bag, what wisdom would you impart to a young coach trying to follow in your footsteps and become a legend in the sport himself?
Well, you can ask some of the coaches that have been here, if you'd like, to my constant pitch to them is just trust yourself. Trust your system. Trust what you do, that is the best. You're better than me right now. You have to trust that. If you don't, then you're never going to be anything. If you're always changing, if you're always, that guy does something this better, that guy does something better than me, then you're never going to be anything. Just trust in what you do, and it's either going to take you there or not take you there. But if you keep changing coats, if you keep changing ideas, then you're never going to get there.
How do you know when you've got there as a coach? How do you know when it's like time to spend more time with your grandkids? Time to hand the keys over to somebody else?
Maybe when I honestly can't do it no more, because I have a coach that was my amateur coach that comes up here with his fighters 3 times a week for sparring, and he helps me in the corner. Ben Lira, the little short Ben Lira, who's 77, who'll be 77 years old, May 22nd. Okay, he's still doing it. You don't know. You don't know, because this is such a thing that's inside your heart, inside you, that you see somebody. Ben right now has a kid that's 11-0, Luis Feliciano, who's doing exceptionally well. Now he's dragged them back in, because this young man, he turned pro. Now he's 11-0, and now he's 77 years old and still wants to see this kid win a world title. That means maybe 3 more years, he'll be 80 years old. So we really don't know. We don't do it because we see the pot at the end of the rainbow. We do it because we love what we do, and if that pot at the end of the rainbow is there, we're lucky.
I remember a quote that I read from you talking about your favorite moment in boxing, or one of the greatest moments in boxing. I think it was in the corner with Terry Norris during the Sugar Ray Leonard fight. I'll let you explain that moment.
It's the between the 8th and the 9th round, and Terry Norris comes back to the corner. He's knocked down Ray twice, I think, already, knocked his tooth out. And he comes back to the corner. I said to Terry, I said, T, time to knock this guy out. And he looked at me and he said, Coach, he's my idol. He's going to go 12. Terry Norris carried him for 4 more rounds because that was his idol. That was such for me, a passionate thing to hear him say that. And I thought about it later. I says, this man is in the fight of his life. He's at the Garden in a very important fight. And he's thinking about this man being a man, not taking his greatness away from him. That to me was special, very special.
And that is the camaraderie in boxing. That's like
absolutely
the respect between warriors. That's the hug at the end of the fight, no matter how much trash was talked at the press conference. And it made me wonder, if that's the height, if that's the best of it, what's the worst of it? Is there a moment that stands out? Is it this moment where it's the contrast to that?
Unfortunately, I've been involved or I've been witness to 3 tragedies in boxing where men have either gotten seriously hurt or died. I think that's the worst moments. There's nothing that can happen to me short of somebody dying that could equal that. That stays with me forever. My last fight with Kovalev, we fought in Russia, and unfortunately, a young man named Roman Simikov died from the injuries he sustained in that fight. And that was on December the 1st, I believe. And Gennady fought on December the 6th. In Germany, and December the 6th, Gennady knocks out Lejuan Simon with a left hook in the first round. And generally, my first reaction when my guys win is to go hug him and go pick him up in the ring, right? My first reaction, if you look at the videotape, my first reaction was to run to Lejuan Simon, to where he was out laying down, to see if he was okay. Because I think all that comes back to you, all the tragedy that happened just 5 days before was very fresh on my mind. And I think that's probably the worst thing that I could ever encounter, I could ever think about that could happen to me in this game. Nothing else could equal that.
I noticed that true teachers that are trainers, after the dust settles, you live through a lot of fighters' careers. Your career is much longer than that of the fighter himself. And they come back. They revisit their coach at some point, no matter what happened. I noticed that a lot of these trainers, a lot of these guys who really taught and had a relationship with their fighters, you see them hanging around the gym eventually once they retired and got fat. You see them on the documentaries. You see them getting choked up now when they talk about these guys. I hope, and I'm wondering if you feel like even in this moment that one day you and Triple G will be that way. You think it'll come back to that moment?
It will definitely.
Excuse me.
It will definitely. I think that once we grow up, when you're older, hopefully you've grown up. But once we grow up as adults, we realize the importance and some of the important things we thought were important. Yeah. In 3 or 4 years ago, we had Danny Jacobs fight Terry Norris up in New York. Gennady Golovkin in New York. And I invited Terry Norris and his wife. I bought their tickets, took them to New York, because I felt that, and I told Terry this, I felt that the reason that I was fighting at the Garden with one of my guys, he was instrumental in that, because we learned a lot together coming up. I learned from him, he learned from me. And I owed him that. I owed him to be seen, I owed him to be recognized for who he was. So I took him to New York. Now that was 22 years after what happened in San Diego. Hopefully in the future, next 20, 25 years, we grow up, if I'm still around, and we get to rekindle something.
Well, those of us who have grown up in the sport, such as myself, and studied boxing from outside the ring, appreciate you. And I appreciate this very important conversation that you're willing to have with me today. The place that we are at is one of the important places in my life. I've done a lot of things here, and I appreciate you opening up these doors, open up your heart, and having a real honest conversation with me, Abel. Radio Rahim with Abel Sanchez at the Summit. Always a pleasure. Thank you so much, Coach.
You're welcome.